Now let's turn to politics and the race for the White House. Joe Biden taking this holiday weekend to fire off not fireworks, but certainly some politically charged tweets at the president. Here is one of them. He says, we are, quote, going to beat Donald Trump. And when we do, we won't just rebuild this nation, we'll transform it. Let's bring in Steve Cortes. Cortes, why don't we? America First spokesman. Steve, what do you think, what does Joe Biden, do you think, mean by transform? Have at it.
Right. Ashley, I think it's important we should quote Maya Angelou here. And when someone tells you who they are, believe them the first time. In the case of Joe Biden, the corporate media is desperate for us to buy into the myth of the moderate, the idea that he is a center-left or centrist candidate. He is not. And we know that by his own words. He's told us who he is. And I'll give you some specific examples of his radical agenda. He has promised, for example, that he will make all illegal migrants in the United States, tens of millions of them, full citizens. He will give amnesty and citizenship and voting rights to them. He also further promises that taxpayer-funded health care will be provided to any and all illegal aliens in the United States. A couple of other examples. He promises that Beto O'Rourke, the fake Hispanic former congressman from Texas, the gun-grabbing radical, will be in charge of gun policy in his administration. In a similar way, he pledges that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of the so-called Squad, I prefer to call them the socialist Spice Girls, that she will be in charge of implementing the Green New Deal, which we know would absolutely wreck our economy, particularly in this stage of recovery of the great American comeback that commences in our country. So his agenda is radical. We know this by his own words. Pay attention. And as I said, when he tells us who he is, believe him.
Well, he's been writing too, Steve. Take a look at this op-ed that Joe Biden wrote, published on the 4th of July. It was entitled, Trump Erodes America's Foundation. This 4th of July, I pledge to rebuild it. That was the title. And in it, he writes this. He says, quote, every day he finds new ways to tarnish and dismantle our democracy. He has systematically gone after the guardrails of our democracy, the free press, the courts, and our fundamental belief that no one in America, not even the president, is above the law. Steve, is this going to be Joe Biden's mantra for the next 4 months?
Well, Ashley, if it is, it certainly won't resonate with the American people. I think what will resonate, speaking of July 4th, is the July 4th speech that we saw from the president, both his speech at the White House and the night before at Mount Rushmore. We saw an unapologetic reaffirmation of American ideals. And he spoke with really power and eloquence and persuasion that while our country at times has failed to live up to our ideals, and that is clear, and we have to be honest about that, failing to live up to them in no way negates the majesty of America's principles. And I think that when the president powerfully makes the case for American exceptionalism, that will be a winning message for the American people. It's needed, number one, most importantly for our country. But number two, I think it's a politically winning message that will carry us to victory in November.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Joe Biden, more than 40 years in government. I'm not quite sure what he's transformed in more than 40 years. All right, Steve Cortes, great stuff as always, Steve. Appreciate your time this morning.